You know how people always say you never want to meet someone who inspires you? You never want to meet someone that you might look up to because it will ruin your perception of that person. You will ultimately be disappointed. I have never met Steve Kerr personally. I don't need to go through the experience of meeting him to be disappointed because I already am. I have followed the NBA career of Steve Kerr since the mid 90s when he joined the Bulls. Now, he was never my favorite NBA player. That will always be Michael Jordan. But I do have to say, Zion Williamson is working his way up. Actually, right now, my favorite player in the NBA is someone most of you guys have probably never heard of, Jose Alvarado. If you watch the Pelicans on a nightly basis, you know exactly who I'm talking about. This is the reason I say stats are meaningless. I know analysts like Mina Kimes don't want to hear or admit that because they would be out of work. Jose Alvarado, he doesn't put up big numbers. He's a role player, comes off the bench most nights. He's not a sixth man like Jamal Crawford, who will give you 20 and 10 every night, but Jose Alvarado is a game changer. He has the ability to carry this team on his shoulders. Why? Because of his energy. His energy is contagious. Jose Alvarado is the classic overachiever. He's undersized. Most of the time, he's the smallest player on the floor. In just his second year in the league, he has already become one of the leaders in New Orleans. During his playing career, Steve Kerr, he was the same way, the classic overachiever. I like to gravitate towards players like that. They're not blessed with God-given talent. They're not 7 feet tall, but they understand their role and they play it to perfection. Steve Kerr was inspirational to a lot of people throughout his playing career and even through part of his coaching career. Coaching at the professional level, it is difficult, it's not easy to lead a group of grown men, most of which are making double, triple the money that you're making. But just like LeBron James or Greg Popovich, seems like every time Steve Kerr opens his facial orifice, he digs his grave deeper in the woke cemetery. I don't know what it is about these uninformed dudes in the NBA. The woke fungus has completely taken over the league. NFL players and coaches, they give press conferences after every game. I can't think of one time this season where political issues have been brought up in the NFL. In the NBA? In the NBA, it seems to happen multiple times every week. 3 years ago, the media pressed Steve Kerr for his opinion on the NBA's relationship with China. This was right after Daryl Morey tweeted in support of the freedom fighters in Hong Kong. Steve Kerr, the man that has a biased opinion on everything. You want to talk about Glock 9s? Steve Kerr's down to conversate. He can't tell you how to load the clip, but he can tell you you shouldn't be allowed to own one. Defund the police, abortion, mythical racism, rectum respecters. Pick your topic. You provide the grill, Steve Kerr provides the woke wiener. But when it comes to China, Steve Kerr was strangely silent. Watch this clip from 3 years ago.
Steve, obviously the big story in the league right now is Daryl Morey's tweet and everything going on with China. Do you have any thoughts on that situation?
Actually, I don't. I mean, it's a really bizarre international story, and a lot of us don't know what to make of it. So. It's something I'm reading about, and just like everybody is, but I'm not going to comment further than that.
How challenging is that for you at this point? I mean, I'm sure there's you may want to comment on something.
No, I mean, actually, what I've found is that it's easy to speak on issues that I'm passionate about and that I feel like I'm well versed on, and I've found that it makes the most sense to stick to topics that fall in that category. So I try to keep my comments to those things.
Okay, so you heard his excuse. Excuse me, peasant. His Majesty does not discuss matters that he knows nothing about. Yeah. Like I'm supposed to believe Steve Kerr doesn't know anything about China or the NBA's relationship with China. It's not like multiple players on his roster have multi-million-dollar endorsement deals in the land of the rising rectum. It's not like China is one of the NBA's largest markets. Nah. The league doesn't make billions of dollars every year in China, so why would Steve Kerr know anything about the situation? It seems to me Steve Kerr is very, very familiar with China, or at least he's familiar with their system of government, the way they run their media. Judging by his recent comments, he wants the mainstream media in America to be run like the media in China. This past week, Steve Kerr was a guest on Hey Mayne, No One Listens to This Podcast. It's the podcast hosted by Kenny Mayne, former SportsCenter anchor at ESPN, who was released because he fell into multiple wrong demographics. White, check. Identifies as male birthing person, check. Old, while also having an evil skin tone, check. Steve Kerr, Kenny Mayne. They were talking about the mainstream media. Now, to be honest with you, I happen to agree with most of what Steve Kerr said, but he just couldn't help himself. He just had to include the woke slant. The crux of his argument centered around the one word that causes all shit fucks to grab their emotional support shovel: profit. Ooh, I hate profit. Greedy Americans always put profit over birthing persons. Listen for yourself.
But that's part of the modern media machine. Media for profit didn't used to be a thing. I don't know how long ago this really started, but in my mind, media for profit these days is so bad. It's so negative because it pulls people into those camps that you're talking about, and then it just reinforces the negative stereotypes of the other side. And meanwhile, these media companies are just churning out the dollars by fomenting anger and distrust. And it's like, yeah, this is not really a good recipe for a healthy country.
Like I said, Steve Kerr, 100% correct with most of what he said. The mainstream media in this country profits off of divisiveness. They not only profit off of divisiveness, they profit off of negativity. Why? Because that's what we consume. The media is in the business to make money. If positive headlines like non-binary guardian saves tribe from being attacked by starving pack of rectum respecters, if positive headlines like that generated traffic, the media would focus on those topics. But they don't. Controversy creates cash. Divisiveness drums up dollars. Steve Kerr's right. The mainstream media is the driving force behind the divisiveness in this country. The media has been in the business of making money since the late 1960s, maybe early 1970s. Back then, local news stations discovered there was a lot of money to be made by producing local newscasts. By the late 1970s, 60% of their revenue was generated by news. Now, that's not a bad thing. The problem with the mainstream media, it's not related to profit. The problem in the media has nothing to do with their focus on negativity to generate revenue. Throughout my lifetime, the media has always had a negative slant. The biggest problem in the modern media is the agenda. Steve Kerr insinuates that this problem can be solved by removing the element of profit. If we take away their ability to make money, we will have a more honest media. Wrong. Steve Kerr claims for-profit media is not a recipe for a healthy country. Wrong. Right now, we have a variety of sources available to us. If you want to be brainwashed, you can get your news from MSNBC. If you prefer more common sense than propaganda, you can watch Fox News or read Mediaite. If you get aroused by seeing elderly men without a shirt with a big stiff cigar in their mouth, you can watch Chrissy Cuomo on News Nation. There are hundreds, maybe even thousands of options for you to choose from. But it's up to you to decide the truth. It's up to you to decide which media outlets are reporting honestly and which are full of shit. That's how media in a capitalistic system works. Steve Kerr is pushing the alternative. He didn't come out and say it, probably because he knew he would be harshly criticized for doing so. But the insinuation was there, and it was enough. The alternative to for-profit media is state-run media. Contrary to the belief of Steve Kerr, having a state-run media would not reduce divisiveness. Damn sure wouldn't reduce propaganda. If the government ever got full control of the media, they would have complete control over the population. The biggest threat to a tyrannical government is information, knowledge, and informed population. We already have a government-run media outlet in this country. It's called NPR. It's the propaganda machine for the federal government. Hell, you can make the case the vast majority of the mainstream media is already being controlled by the government. If not controlled, they're at least manipulated. Most of the mainstream media is no longer hiding their bias. Now, there's another reason I found these comments from Steve Kerr to be interesting. Steve Kerr is not the first person with the Golden State Warriors to want full control of the media narrative. Guess where we've heard this before? Draymond Green. Remember during the NBA Finals and immediately after the NBA Finals, Draymond Green kept talking about this new media. You remember that? He was tired of the sports media controlling the narrative. He wanted NBA players to come together to form a new media where the league would essentially be covering itself. Now, these are the same people who complain when cops investigate cops. These same people want to investigate or cover themselves. The idea behind having a free press was to keep the government in check. The media is supposed to be the watchdog of the people. They keep tabs on the government. They keep the public informed. If politicians aren't keeping their promises, people vote them out. Now, that's the way it's supposed to work, as you guys know. It's not how the American media operates, which is why I'm a bit confused as to why Steve Kerr insinuates that state-run media would solve all these problems. If we're being honest, we already have a state-run media and they're causing all the problems. But let me know what you think. Steve Kerr claims for-profit media is the problem and insinuates government-controlled media is the solution. Should be a surprise to no one. Steve Kerr doesn't like capitalism, but give me your thoughts. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, KC_BTL84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys tomorrow.